Back in January, I did a story about a man named Dillon Siebeck who was shot and killed by the Glendale, Arizona Police Department simply because he was sitting in a park at a gazebo that was adjacent to a street where a suspect vehicle had been parked that was earlier involved in some sort of a gun flashing domestic violence incident. We've been waiting for the body cam to come out and waiting to hear what would come of the investigation. Well, we got an update, and it's not great. Let's talk about it. What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Southern Draw Law. My name is James White, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, former police officer. So before we get too far ahead, I just want to sort of give you a reminder of what this case is all about. And the best way to do that is just to refer you back to the video that I did back in January. So we'll just watch a little snippet here to get the background, and then we'll come back and talk about what's going on now. So it's Glendale, Arizona. The Glendale, Arizona Police Department gets a call from a female who states that she and her boyfriend were involved in a domestic violence incident, and he ends up pointing a gun at her. So the police respond to the scene where the domestic took place, and by that time, the suspect from that domestic has gone. He's not there anymore. The suspect is a 24-year-old Hispanic man, small in stature. The police comb the area, and they find what they believe to be the suspect vehicle parked near a local park. And so they approach the vehicle and notice that the windows are darkly tinted, so they aren't able to see inside from the sides. Now, adjacent to the area where the person parked the car is a park, and under a gazebo is 46-year-old Dillon Siebeck, who looks nothing like the person that they're looking for. However, doing what they do, they begin giving Mr. Siebeck verbal commands to put his hands up, and based on his inability to comply, probably because he had no clue what was going on or why the cops were yelling and pointing guns at him, he makes a furtive movement that results in him getting shot and killed as a result of a very reckless way to conduct an investigation by the Glendale Police Department. So somebody posted in my comments section, and I missed this update. I guess this happened towards the end of April, so it's been about a month now. I missed this update, but somebody posted in my comments section and said no charges. And I just, surprise, surprise. It is, after all, Maricopa County, and since I've done so many videos on Maricopa County, Phoenix area law enforcement on my channel because it is just so bad out there as far as the law enforcement situation. I guess it wasn't a surprise. The Maricopa County Attorney's Office has decided not to pursue charges against the police officer that shot Dillon Siebeck. And they did release some body cam. But what I want to do is just to make sure that we get all the information out. The story comes to us from our friends over at ABC News 15, which seems to be the only people in Arizona that really care about holding the police accountable. And so let's listen to what they have to say in order to get the update.
The Glendale police officer who shot and killed an unarmed man will not be charged. That announcement coming alongside body camera video from the night of the shooting. Our Lillian Donahue tracking this big new development, talking with one lawmaker now speaking out against the decision.
The deadly police shooting happened near 47th Avenue and Glendale in January. We're seeing body camera footage now for the first time, which shows the moments before and after the shots were fired. We have two camera angles to show you, and we want to warn you the content of this story may disturb some viewers.
I need you to put your hands up, buddy. I want to help you out. I can't do that if you've got a weapon on you. Good man.
Nothing in his hands. Nothing in his hands.
Keep your hands up, and you're going to walk towards me, okay? Keep your hands on your head. No, hands on your head. Hands on your head. Listen to me, please.
He's picking up something.
Keep your hands. Angelo, hands up.
But that was not Angelo.
We're code 4. Guys.
Now, I want to just pause you for just a second here. I want to take a look at what we just saw. So I'm going to back this up a little bit, and I want you to observe the number of police cars that are present at this scene. So I just want you to keep in mind, this came out as a man with a gun call, and there is no more heightened level of awareness, heightened level of response. There is no more serious call given to a police department than a man with a gun call. None. And you can say, well, mass shooting, but listen, a man with a gun call could be getting ready to become a mass shooting. So they treat them the same. If you got a man with a gun, the way they view it and the way they respond to it is that's one mistake away from him beating containment and getting out and becoming a mass shooter. And so look at all these police cars. What do you see here? Let's count them. Let's just count them from the footage that we saw here. Well, you really just can't. All right, here we go. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We got 8 there. Camera pans a little wider. We got it's innumerable. The number of police cars that you have there, you can't count them. There are so many because it came out as a domestic and a man with a gun call. Now, think about what we just saw. We just saw 15 seconds worth of body cam footage. 15 seconds where the view is obscured by the police officer's arm who's drawn down on Mr. Siebeck, calling him Angelo. 15 seconds in total from 2 or 3 different angles where you see nothing. You see absolutely nothing in this body cam at all, other than there is one thing that happens that's very telling. We'll come back to that in just a second. But the rest of the body cam has not been seen. I reported this happening in January. It's been 6 months. Where's the body cam? Let's finish up, watch the rest of this news story so we can hear what the horrible decision was not to charge this guy, and then we'll come back and talk about some more things.
Police say officers shot and killed 46-year-old Dillon Siebeck at a Glendale park, who was not armed. This happening while police searched for Angelo Diaz, a domestic violence suspect. Officers later found Diaz nearby in his truck with a self-inflicted gunshot wound, while Siebeck died in the park.
Justice was absolutely not served in this case.
State Representative Annalise Ortiz frustrated by the use of force in her district.
When our communities are not safe from the potential of a police officer shooting and killing us while we're sitting on a park bench, then we don't have public safety.
The Peoria Police Department and the Maricopa County Attorney's Office were tasked with the external review of the January incident. MCAO announcing on Tuesday the decision not to press charges.
We cannot accept this as the norm, and I think it's really wrong that there weren't charges brought in this case.
The law team representing Siebeck's family said in January, quote, Dillon did not match the description of the man police were seeking, nor did police ask Dillon for identification. The sheer tragedy of killing an innocent man demands accountability.
Safety's off.
Glendale Police says the officer involved is still on administrative leave pending the department's internal investigation. The department saying they're committed to staying fair and impartial.
Far too often we see that the justice system works in the favor of the police department and the prosecutors.
So there you go. That's what we got as far as body cam goes. We got basically a notice from the Maricopa County Attorney's Office saying, we're not going to charge him because we said so. And you just deal with it because this is Arizona. And the feds aren't even looking into Arizona law enforcement anymore. So nobody cares. Nobody cares, right? This was just a convicted felon, homeless guy. You know, don't worry about the fact that we sent him to war and didn't deal with his injuries or his emotional trauma that was inflicted as a result. We don't really care about what happens to these people after we use them up, right? We just bring them home, treat them like shit the rest of their lives, and then, you know, hopefully bestow the mercy of officer-involved shooting on them so they can end it early. I mean, the idea that, I don't know. Sometimes I'm at a loss for words as to how heartless some of these supposed leaders are. But anyway, the legal team for the Siebeck family that are pursuing possible legal remedies for this case has put out a notice asking for, as I alluded to earlier, the full body cam. Now, why don't we have it? It's 6 months later. I'll tell you why we don't have it. Because it tells a story that they don't want you to hear. That's why. But let's look at what they wrote. The national civil rights law firm of Romanucci and Blandon and the highly respected Arizona law firm of Lerner and Rowe represent the family of Dillon Siebeck, a 46-year-old unarmed and innocent man who was senselessly shot and killed on January 8th by Glendale, Arizona police officers who made a tragic error and believed Dillon was a suspect in a crime. Dillon did not match the description of the man police were seeking, nor did police ask Dillon for identification. The sheer tragedy of killing an innocent man demands accountability. We demand full and immediate transparency and the public release of any and all body camera footage and dashboard camera footage of the killing. We have submitted a public records request for this information. It has been nearly 3 weeks since Dillon was needlessly killed, and his loved ones are still waiting. This grieving family and the community deserve to know the truth of what happened. We have serious questions that must be answered about the use of deadly force in this encounter. We believe every life is precious and that all who cared about Dillon wish deeply that he was still alive today. That was the end of January, and we are in freaking June. The first week of June, here we are. They've released 15 seconds worth of body cam that shows absolutely nothing to the public, to ABC News 15, and then just said, we're not going to do anything about it. Now, there is something about the body cam that we do actually see. And this is one of those things that happens. You hear an officer saying he's picking something up. Now, how much sense does this make? If you're, again, I'm only imagining how this is going because of what I hear, because I can't see the body cam for obvious reasons. So, but they're saying, put your hands up, hands on your head, walk this way, whatever. They're doing all that. And then all of a sudden they're like, no, hands on your head. And then one guy says he's picking something up, and then boom, boom. And you have multiple shots. And it sounds to me like, again, I wouldn't have to speculate if they'd just released the footage, but it sounds to me like somebody had a happy trigger finger. Now, I will have to say that, 100 feet away in the dark, it's probably hard to tell what a person looks like, but there was literally nothing except this. You guys will realize this, right? So you got all these officers and they sort of converge on this car, and it looks no different than what happens when these officers all become conveniently aware that somebody is watching them and somebody is spectating into their activities, and then they decide to take control. And so what it sounds like to me is that this is no different than the situation that Lackluster and I talked about on his interview the other day that started his channel, which is where these guys were fine. They weren't concerned about anything going on around them until all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, what if somebody's videotaping us? What if somebody's looking at us? And then they look around and all of a sudden they see this guy sitting over at a park in a gazebo. Now, maybe it's the cynic in me. Maybe it's the fact that I've learned not to trust our government. But the idea that they just decided all of a sudden to take an interest in this guy, isn't it possible that they were concerned that this guy was going to be a witness to whatever it was they were getting ready to do? And that was the reason that they decided to have an interest in him. And of course, as soon as they take an interest in you, if there's a high risk situation like this, and then you don't immediately do what they want you to do, they can kill you. And so that's where we are. And they shouldn't be able to. There's a negligent homicide statute that I went over in my previous video that would apply in this situation. So let's walk through the negligent homicide analysis, and we'll talk about those elements real quick, and then we'll come back and finish this up. Title 13-1102, a person commits negligent homicide if with criminal negligence the person causes the death of another person. So you could have a situation where the jury just sees it as negligence, which means that, negligence again is you had a duty to conduct yourself a certain way. That would be duty. What you should have done is A, B, C, or D. Instead, you did E, F, G, H. And so that was a breach of duty. So you got breach, you got duty, you got breach, and then causation would be, but for you breaching your duty, this person would not be dead, and the consequences were foreseeable, that based on the circumstances. So that would be both direct and proximate cause. And then damages is causation is the link between the breach of duty and the end result, which is damages, and so the damages is death. Now, I do want to say that there was one thing that I sort of misrepresented in the last video that I did on this case. And I said that no force is authorized where you don't have a situation where the person is a party to whatever's going on. That's not really true in the grand scheme of the way the court looks at them, because what the court does is this sort of ass backwards thing. They take a scenario and they say, well, in order for us to figure out whether excessive force was used, even if the person was not subject to arrest. So they would still have potentially a false arrest or a unlawful seizure claim under the Fourth Amendment for Mr. Siebeck, because being shot is being seized and he had nothing to do with this. So they do definitely have, in my opinion, a Fourth Amendment violation. But whether or not they have an excessive force violation has to be viewed under the lens of, let's assume that they had a lawful reason to arrest him. and then we assume the arrest is lawful for the purposes of applying the Graham factors. Well, again, we've done this 100 times, but what are the Graham factors? Well, obviously the one that sticks out in this particular case would be like the threat of harm to police officers. And that's the one that they're going to hang their hat on. I don't know whether the court would say, well, they have a good faith belief that he was the person that was involved in this high stakes man with a gun call. And for that reason, that justified the felony stop and sort of commands and guns drawn and all that stuff. And because of that, and because of what he did, because we don't know what his condition was at the time, maybe they say, well, it's probably not an excessive force case, even though I can't wrap my head around a way that this wouldn't be excessive force because you shot this guy and he's unarmed. But they do weird things when we're talking about police officers and furtive movements in the courts. Certainly a Fourth Amendment unlawful seizure claim for sure, but maybe or maybe not, depending on how the courts analyze it, as far as the excessive force. It's still a violation of the Fourth Amendment, but I wanted to correct that because I don't want you guys thinking that I take the position that if you're not involved, the police can't use any force on you at all. That's not what the courts say. The courts first look to see whether the force would be reasonable if you were subject to being arrested. And if the force that they used in order to take you into custody is not justified, if they did have a lawful reason to arrest you, then it's an excessive force claim. Otherwise, it's not an excessive force claim. So I just wanted to clear that up. In closing, in this case, it's Maricopa County, Arizona. And what this really comes down to is, and you guys have seen it 1,000 times. You've seen it in First Amendment cases. You've seen it in Fourth Amendment cases. You've seen it anytime these guys are getting called to the carpet. They just cling to their justification and they do everything they can to try to get a conviction. And when I go through these criminal charges for homicide and all that stuff, I'm operating on the assumption that the district attorney sees a crime that they want to prosecute. And the bottom line is you just can't do that in Arizona. You can't assume that the district attorney anywhere in the state of Arizona is going to want to prosecute police officers, even if they kill people. You know, I've seen it in my own practice. I had a guy that they charged with maintaining a dwelling, which in Tennessee, you have a criminal charge that's a C felony that essentially criminalizes setting up a retail shop out of a house to sell narcotics. And it basically says that if you maintain, if you contribute to, if you do anything to sort of make this, we'll say a business for lack of other words, happen, this safe space for people to come and transact drug business, if you contribute to that in any way and you have some sort of substantial and lengthy control or authority over the residents, you can be charged with a C felony. I had a client that they charged and held on to for 4 years. And the freaking lab report from the TBI said there were no narcotics. Well, you can't convict somebody of committing a crime for setting up a retail shop for narcotics if you found no freaking narcotics there, right? But they do, and they want to hold on to it forever. So it really just comes down to prosecutorial discretion, and they have 100% immunity for prosecutorial decisions. And that, just along with all the other immunity, is the reason that we don't get any accountability, because there are no consequences for their actions. You know, even where they get charged with a crime, if they get acquitted, well, you know, their life continues. Maybe they're not a police officer anymore, but their life continues. They get to keep going. Well, you know, Dillon Siebeck's not going to go anymore. He's not going to be at the Thanksgiving table this year to see his family or be with his kids or rebuild his life or any of that stuff. And they could care less because they know that there's not a single thing that anybody's going to do to them. And 4 years from now, when it's time to re-elect people, they'll be worried about something else and they won't even remember. And that's the point. Now, the good news is that Maricopa County always has a shitstorm wrapped around its law enforcement. So, you know, you can kind of always assume that the district attorney maybe needs replaced because they're not doing their job if you're having this many problems with police. I just get so frustrated with the lack of accountability. And then for them to not release the body cam, even that, what an insult to release 15 seconds of body cam alongside a decision to not prosecute this police officer. If I was a district attorney and I was going to put out a public notification that I was going to pass on bringing charges I would release the body cam that helped me arrive at my decision. The fact that they will not release the body cam should tell you that they believe the public will not agree with their decision not to charge this police officer. So anyway, that's all I got, guys. Just wanted to bring you the update because I did report the original story. My condolences again go out to the Siebeck family. I do hope that you win millions and millions and millions of dollars. And I do hope that somebody somewhere decides to oust this horrible district attorney in Maricopa County, Arizona. Based on the comments that come in about this video, I will probably write a companion blog to sort of get into some of the deeper dive stuff, to talk about things that maybe I didn't consider when I made this video. So head over to Substack, sign up for the blog, the newsletter. It's absolutely free to join. You can join on a paid tier if you'd like to, but you don't have to. It's just something that people can do if they want to support the channel monetarily. If you don't want to go to Substack, but you'd like to support the channel monetarily, I'll put my Venmo and PayPal links both here on the screen as well as in the description. Please remember to like and subscribe and leave a comment on the video. Check out some of the other videos on the channel. Leave a comment on there as well. Until I see you again, take care. Always film your interactions with the police and keep your evidence to yourself.